upsets here and there, and also some big injury news, unfortunately, for some of these games. As always, we have our trusty notebook here, and we're going to open to a fresh page and get this started. So let's count the pages here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and finally, page 12. The first game of Week 7 was, of course, on Thursday night, and this game was between the Saints and Cardinals. The Saints versus the Cardinals. This was a nice change of pace for the Thursday night games. The past 2 weeks had been very boring, low-scoring games, and this one was quite the opposite. The score ended up being 42-34 in favor of the Cardinals. This is one of, if not the highest scoring game of the NFL season so far. I'm not exactly sure, but it's definitely up there. Andy Dalton of the Saints led the game with 361 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Eno Benjamin of the Cardinals had 92 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. And Chris Olave of the Saints continues his stellar rookie season with 106 receiving yards. The Saints are now 2-5, and the Cardinals are 3-4. I should mention Dalton also had 2 pick sixes in the first half to go along with those 4 touchdowns. So while it seems like he had a great game passing, he actually gave up 2 touchdowns through interceptions. Next up, was the Falcons versus Bengals on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We saw the Bengals win this game pretty easily, 35-17. Joe Burrow led the game in passing yards with 481 and 3 touchdowns. Joe Mixon had 58 yards on 17 carries and 1 touchdown. And Tyler Boyd actually led the game in receiving yards with 155 yards and a touchdown. The Falcons are now 3-4, and the Bengals are 4-3. have the Lions and Cowboys. I believe I predicted the Cowboys defense shutting down the Lions here. And if I did, I was right, as it ended 24-6 in favor of the Cowboys in Dak Prescott's return to action. The Cowboys are now 5-2, and the Lions are 1-5. Jared Goff led the game with 228 passing yards, and he also had 2 interceptions. Tony Pollard led the game with 83 yards. Also, Ezekiel Elliott scored 2 touchdowns. And Khalif Raymond of the Lions led the game in receiving yards with 75. Next up was the Colts vs. Titans. The Titans won this game 19-10. The Titans are now 4-2, and the Colts are 3-1. And I believe the Titans have already beat the Colts twice this year, which could be pretty big at the end of the season in terms of playoff seeding. Matt Ryan had 243 yards and a touchdown. Derrick Henry had 128 yards on the ground. And Paris Campbell led the game in receiving for the Colts with 70 yards and a touchdown. And apparently the Colts next week are going to be starting Sam Ehlinger at quarterback, which is an interesting change. I think they have Nick Foles too on the roster. So pretty interesting change to go to Sam Ehlinger there next week. I guess we'll have to see how that plays out for them. Next was a bit of a surprise. In the Packers vs. Commanders game, I said in my predictions video I was unsure if Taylor Heineke was the backup for the Commanders still, and he indeed is, and he started this game due to Carson Wentz's injury. And he actually led the Commanders to a victory over the Green Bay Packers in this one. A bit of a surprising win for the Commanders. Heineke led the game in passing yards with 201, also throwing 2 touchdowns. Brian Robinson led the game with 73 rushing yards. Pretty amazing story he is. If you don't know, he was shot 2 times in during not spring training, but camp before the preseason. Preseason, that's what I'm looking for. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. He was shot twice during preseason and made a full recovery and is now playing football, leading games in rushing yards. So everyone, of course, very glad to see him okay and well. And then Terry McLaurin led the game in receiving yards with 73 yards and a touchdown. Both teams are now 3-4 on the year. Pretty surprising for the Packers to be under 5. Well, some would say. since Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback, they should be 3-4, and they have a pretty good defense. But their receivers, man, they're just not good. A lot to be desired there. Next up is the most surprising result of the week, in my opinion. We have the Bucs versus the Panthers. The Panthers won 21-3, shutting down Tom Brady and the Bucs offense. I think the spread of this game closed at almost 14 points or something ridiculous like that. So pretty wild. The Panthers won this game, especially by 18. They just traded away Christian McCaffrey. I don't think I've covered that in my videos yet. The Panthers just traded star running back Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers for 3 or 4 draft picks next year. To go along with that, they also recently fired their head coach Matt Rule, and their interim head coach had some beef with wide receiver Robbie Anderson, causing Anderson to leave one of the games early and go into the tunnel. So things weren't looking good for the Panthers, but all of a sudden they turned things around and beat the Bucs, who are supposed to be Super Bowl contenders, pretty easily here, 21-3. So that was a bit of a shocker. The Panthers are now 2-5, and the Bucs are 3-4. I think this is the first time in several years, maybe even ever, that Brady and Rodgers are under 500 through 7 games in a season. Brady did lead the game in passing yards with 290. Deonta Foreman had 118 yards on the ground. And Mike Evans had 96 yards receiving to lead the game. Moving on. We have the Giants versus the Jaguars. And the Giants came away with yet another victory. The Giants are now a stunning 6-1, and the Jaguars are 2-5. Trevor Lawrence led the game with 310 passing yards. Travis Etienne had 114 yards and a touchdown on the ground, I think his first career NFL touchdown. And Christian Kirk of the Jaguars had 96 yards on 7 receptions to lead the game in receiving. Next up, is the Browns versus Ravens. The Ravens were able to hold on to this one 23-20. They are now 4-3, and the Browns are 2-5. Jacoby Brissett led the game with 258 passing yards. Nick Chubb of the Browns had 91 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Amari Cooper of the Browns led the game with 74 receiving yards. Next is another surprise New York football team, the Jets, and they played the Broncos this week. Russell Wilson. The Jets won 16-9. The Broncos offense once again looks terrible no matter who the quarterback is. Although the backup Ripien did lead the game in passing yards with 225, yet he did throw an interception. Brees Hall led the game with 72 rushing yards and a touchdown on just 4 carries, and he did unfortunately tear his ACL in this game. Hall was looking like he was the next superstar running back in the making, and he tore his ACL in this game, unfortunately. And that has led the Jets to trade for Jaguars running back James Robinson. So James Robinson is now on the Jets, and Travis Etienne should get a lot more work for the Jaguars. And Jerry Jeudy led this game in receiving yards with 96. The Jets are now 5-2, and the Broncos are 2-5. I think most people, if you asked them at the beginning of the year, would have guessed it would be the opposite at this point, with the Jets being 2-5 and the Broncos sitting at 5-2. Next is the Texans versus Raiders. The Raiders won this game pretty handedly, 38-20. The Raiders are now 2-4, and the Texans are 1-4-1. Davis Mills led the game in passing with 302 yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs had another good game, 143 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. And Devontae Adams had 95 receiving yards for the Raiders to lead the game. Next was another bit of a surprise. With the Seahawks beating the Chargers 37-23. And they continue to outperform expectations with Geno Smith. The offense is looking pretty good, putting up 37 on the Chargers. Justin Herbert led the game with 293 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rookie Kenneth Walker had a great game with 23 carries, 168 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Austin Eckler of the Chargers led the game in receiving yards with 96 and a touchdown. Both teams are now 4-3. Next game was the Chiefs versus 49ers. The Chiefs won pretty easily, 44-23. A lot of high team totals this week. We have a 44, 37, 38, 35, 42, 34. Lots of points scored this week. Patrick Mahomes had 423 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Jeff Wilson Jr. led the game with 54 rushing yards despite Christian McCaffrey playing for the 49ers in his debut. And Juju Smith-Schuster looked like the Juju Smith-Schuster of 3 years ago, maybe at this point, with 124 yards receiving and a touchdown. The Chiefs are now 5-2, and the 49ers are 3-4. The Sunday night game was Steelers versus Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa returning in this game and thankfully finished it injury-free. The Dolphins went on to win 16-10. Pretty low-scoring game. Tua led the game with 261 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Raheem Mostert led the game for the Dolphins with 79 rushing yards. And Jalen Waddle, also of the Dolphins, led the game with 88 receiving yards. The Dolphins are now 4-3, and the Steelers are 2-5. And last but not least, we have the Monday night game. Which was the Bears versus Patriots. A very sad game for me, a Patriots fan, where the Patriots lost 33-14 at home. Pretty embarrassing loss for the Patriots. Mac Jones did make his return from injury in this game, but threw an early interception and was benched for Bailey Zappi. Zappi led the team to 2 quick touchdowns, but then they didn't score for the rest of the game, which was the entire second half, and gave up to 33 points to a pretty bad Bears offense. So this one was a bit surprising. Zappi led the game with 185 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Justin Fields had 82 yards rushing on 14 carries and a touchdown. And Devontae Parker had 68 yards to lead the game in receiving. Both teams are now 3-4. And the teams on bye this week were the Bills, the Rams, the Vikings, and the Eagles. So some of the best teams in the league did not play this week, but we'll see them back in action in Week 8. I will have my Week 8 predictions video out soon, either tomorrow. Well, we'll see when I upload this. This will either go live Tuesday or Wednesday, and the predictions video will be live Wednesday or Thursday before Thursday Night Football. But those are all of the games for Week 7. As always, thank you for watching. Please comment which of these games was the biggest surprise for you. I think for me it was the Panthers-Bucks, as I said, but there were a few surprises in this one. Again, thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.